You know what hurts more than being forgotten? Being erased. If this story finds you, don't scroll away. Just listen. Because one day, it might be your face missing from a picture you built your whole life around. It started on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that pretends to be peaceful. The house smelled like lemon polish and fresh bread, my daughter-in-law's attempt at warmth. Laughter drifted from the living room, light and shallow, bouncing off walls that used to echo with something real. That's when I saw it, the new family photo. They'd placed it right above the mantel, the most visible spot in the house. The golden frame glowed in the afternoon sun. There was my son, his perfect wife, the grandkids in their matching blue shirts, even the damn Labrador with a bow tie. But not me. Not the man who built this house, brick by brick. Not the man who kept the lights on when their dreams flickered. I stood there longer than I should have. My reflection ghosted across the glass, faint and misplaced, like I was haunting my own home. I laughed under my breath, quiet enough not to draw attention. They'd call it an oversight. They'd say, "We didn't mean to leave you out, Dad." But the truth? It wasn't an accident. My son came up behind me, cheerful as always, that salesman grin of his never slipping. "Nice, huh?" he said, clapping my shoulder. Turned out better than I expected. "Beautiful," I replied. My voice didn't crack, not once. He didn't even notice my eyes stuck on that empty space where I should have been. When he walked away, I caught my reflection again, just enough to see the smirk forming on my face. The kind that doesn't belong on a broken man, but on one who just remembered what power used to feel like. They think they erased me, but they just gave me room to write myself back in. The rain started around evening, soft at first, then steady, a patient tapping against the window. The kind of sound that makes you remember things you've tried to bury. I poured myself a drink, the glass fogging slightly in my hand. The smell of old oak and whiskey wrapped around me like an old friend. That photo kept staring back. It didn't matter where I moved. I could feel it watching. A reminder, a challenge, a warning. When the thunder rolled in, I turned toward the cabinet under the stairs. That's where I'd kept it. An old envelope sealed in dust and tape. 20 years untouched. 20 years ignored. My hands shook when I picked it up. Not from age, from memory. I carried it to the table, brushed off the dust, and laid it flat. It looked smaller than I remembered. Yellowed at the edges, fragile like it knew it was about to cause trouble again. For a long time, I didn't move. The rain outside grew heavier, wind pressing against the windows like it wanted to listen. I thought about that first lie, the one that started all of this. How I covered for my son when his company nearly went under. How I took the blame when the audit came because it would look better if the old man took the fall, and I did. God help me, I did. I sold half the land to pay their debt, signed the papers with a shaking hand while they promised they'd make it right someday. Someday never came. Now they take photos without me. I tore the seal open. The paper inside was thin, but the words were heavy. A letter. My handwriting. Addressed to myself. Don't forget what they owe you. The words hit me like a fist. I remembered writing them after everything fell apart. After my wife's funeral, after the first cold silence from my son, after realizing I'd built a family that could live without me. I wasn't planning revenge back then. I was just surviving. But now I felt it, that cold pulse of purpose returning. The lights flickered as thunder cracked over the sea. Somewhere upstairs, the laughter died down. The television buzzed. The house began to hum. Not from power, but from something older, something waiting. I unfolded the rest of the letter. Inside was a list of names, dates, and accounts. My handwriting again, but steadier, colder. Every debt I'd cleared for them. Every secret I'd buried. I'd forgotten how thorough I used to be. My son's trust fund that started from my retirement. The mortgage I covered when the market crashed. The blackmail letter I burned for him when he was 26. The one that could have ended his career before it began. All of it. Every sin I carried so they could keep smiling, and now they'd cropped me out. I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath my weight. My heart didn't race. My breathing didn't shake. It was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm you know you're about to start yourself. Maybe I deserved this, I thought. Maybe I was too hard on them. Maybe being forgotten is what happens when you forget to be human first. But then I looked at that photo again, those proud smiles, that perfect arrangement, and I felt something else rise. Not pain, not sadness, something sharper, something almost like hunger. The clock struck 9. My son's voice floated in from the kitchen, cheerful, oblivious. "We're heading out early tomorrow, Dad. Don't wait up." I didn't answer, just nodded. My eyes stayed on the photo. When they all went to bed, I stayed downstairs. The storm had softened, but the air still carried that wet electric smell, the kind that makes old wood sigh. I opened the letter again, reading each line slower this time, like a priest reciting confession. At the bottom, in my wife's handwriting, small, faded, almost erased by time, she had written, "Don't let them forget you." My throat closed. I hadn't seen her handwriting in years. The ink had bled, the words trembling like her voice did in the end. She knew this would happen. She knew they'd replace me long before I was gone. I poured another drink. The glass trembled slightly against the wood. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "I gave them everything." The house didn't answer, but the sea did. A low, distant roar, like something ancient agreeing. Outside, lightning flashed again. The frame caught it for a split second, the glass glowing white before falling back into shadow. I stood, walked over, and took it off the wall. My hands didn't hesitate. I set it face down on the table beside the letter. The room looked better without it. Quieter. Honest. That's when I noticed the other photo, older, hidden behind a stack of magazines. A family portrait from decades ago. My wife still alive. My son still young enough to look innocent. And me, right there in the middle, holding him with both hands. We looked like a family then. Not a performance. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. The rain thinned into mist. The windows fogged. Somewhere upstairs, the floorboards creaked. For a second, I thought I heard my wife's steps again. The way she used to come down when she couldn't sleep. Habit. Made me look toward the stairs. Nothing. Just shadows and the low hum of the fridge. I whispered into the quiet. "I kept them safe, love. I did everything you asked." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was judgment. Maybe she didn't want them safe anymore. Maybe she wanted me to stop protecting people who only remembered me when they needed saving. I sat back down, the envelope open in front of me. The ink had faded, but the intent was clear. This wasn't just a record of debts. It was a map. A way back into the story they'd cut me out of. If they thought they could live comfortably on the bones I left behind, they were wrong. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to make them remember every favor, every lie. Every time they said, "Dad, can you just help us one more time?" And when they came looking for mercy, the kind I'd given too easily for too long, they'd find silence instead. The thunder rolled one last time before fading into distance. The rain eased into a soft hiss. I gathered the papers, folded them carefully, and placed them in a drawer by the window. Not hidden this time. Waiting. My reflection met me in the glass again. Older, heavier, but awake. "You took me out of the picture," I whispered, my voice steady. "Now let's see how you survive without the frame." The words hung there, sharp and certain, cutting through the quiet like lightning in the dark, and somewhere deep inside the walls. The old house creaked, not in protest, but in agreement. The storm outside may have ended, but mine had just begun. You ever notice how quiet a house gets after midnight? Not peaceful quiet, guilty quiet. That's when the walls start whispering, when the air gets thick with all the things nobody dares to say in daylight. If you're listening now, don't scroll. Stay. Because the night I started listening again, everything changed. It began with the sound of the refrigerator humming. That steady, lonely sound filling a house too big for the truth. Everyone was asleep upstairs. The children's soft breathing carried through the floorboards like tiny waves. My son's snore was heavier, lazy, secure, the sound of a man who thinks the world forgave him. I stood in the dark kitchen, the clock ticking loud enough to feel like judgment. The whiskey burned as I took another sip, its warmth spreading just enough to keep the ghosts still. I ran my thumb along the glass rim, tracing circles, slow and deliberate. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. There's a difference. The moonlight cut through the blinds in thin silver stripes, landing across the dining table, the same one where we'd shared birthdays, arguments, and fake apologies. Papers were stacked in the corner, bills and bank notices unopened. I pulled the nearest one closer. Electricity, gas, insurance, all in my name. My son hadn't even changed the account. He'd taken the photo, not the foundation. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. I covered my mouth, afraid the sound would wake someone. But the house didn't mind. It creaked softly, almost like it was laughing with me. That's when the idea started to form. Not revenge, not yet. Restoration, balance. They'd taken the picture. I'd take back the frame. I moved like a thief through my own home. Every drawer, every cabinet. I knew their rhythm, their resistance, their secrets. I opened the study door, slow and quiet, the hinges sighing like old lungs. The room smelled of paper, ink, and arrogance. My son's office. His little kingdom of lies and borrowed pride. I stood there for a moment, watching the shadows stretch across the bookshelves. His trophies lined the walls, proof of a life he thought he built alone. There was even a framed newspaper clipping, Local Entrepreneur of the Year. His face smiling big and clean. No mention of the man who mortgaged his land so that company could be born. I turned on the desk lamp. The light spilled across the wood, soft and accusing. Dust danced in the beam. It looked like time itself floating in front of me, daring me to touch it. I pulled open the first drawer. Receipts, old contracts, keys, nothing worth remembering. Second drawer. Empty folders, a fountain pen, a half-written letter addressed to Dad and never finished. I held it for a second, my fingers trembling slightly. The ink had faded. The words stopped halfway through a sentence. I know you'll never forgive me, but... That "but" hung in the air like a knife that never landed. I folded the letter back neatly and kept going. Third drawer. Locked. Of course. I smiled. A small, knowing thing. My son always underestimated me. I'd taught him how to pick locks before he ever learned how to shave. I reached for the small screwdriver hanging from my key ring, slid it into the groove, and twisted. Click. The drawer opened with a sigh, like it had been waiting for this. Inside, a folder. Black, thick, too clean compared to everything else. My heartbeat slowed instead of racing, the calm that comes when instinct knows what it's about to find. I opened it. The first page was a business ledger. The second was worse. Transfers, signatures, forged initials. My initials. He'd used my name. The son who once cried when he broke my fishing rod had now used my signature to move money through his company. Money that wasn't his. Money that didn't exist anymore. A cold wave rolled through me. Not shock, not even rage. Recognition. I'd done the same once, decades ago, to save us. To build this house. The difference was, I confessed. He concealed. The irony wasn't lost on me. The cycle had come full circle. Only this time, the guilt wasn't mine to carry. I flipped through the pages, each one heavier than the last. Offshore accounts, shady partners, silent investors, all tied back to my family name. My legacy! The whiskey in my throat turned bitter. My hand tightened on the folder until the paper edges bit into my skin. I whispered to the darkness, "You buried me with silence, and still you used my name to build your tower." The words didn't sound angry. They sounded like prayer. A low groan came from the hallway. Maybe the wind, maybe the house listening. I turned off the lamp and waited. The air felt charged, tense, like truth had a pulse and it was beating right under the floor. I heard my daughter-in-law's voice faintly upstairs, sleep-talking, murmuring something about the account. My chest tightened. Even she knew. The old part of me, the father, the protector, wanted to close the folder, burn it, and take the secret to my grave. But another part, the one they buried under polite dinners and polite betrayal, whispered back, "No. Let them feel what forgetting you costs." I took a deep breath. The scent of ink and wood polish filled my nose, grounding me. I looked around that study one last time. The family photos, the fake awards, the empty chair where my son sat pretending to be self-made. Then I began to collect every receipt, every note, every paper with my handwriting forged or my name used. One by one, I stacked them neatly. I wasn't stealing. I was archiving. They called me outdated, old-fashioned, but tonight, I was the archivist, the only one who remembered how this family's story really started. As I moved through the house again, I noticed the details I'd missed for years. The soft hum of the fridge, the faint smell of detergent from the laundry room, the photo still missing from the wall. Every sound, every shadow, every heartbeat in this place belonged to me, even if they didn't remember. I walked past the staircase and paused halfway up. Through the banister, I could see my granddaughter's nightlight glowing faintly under her door. She'd drawn me a picture once, her version of the family portrait. Crayon smiles. Uneven hands. I was in that one. For a moment, my chest softened. Maybe not all of them had forgotten. Maybe she still remembered the man who taught her how to whistle. But then I heard my son mumble in his sleep. My name. Followed by the word problem. And just like that, the softness died. I went back to the living room and stood before the mantel again. The same empty frame mocked me, its golden edges catching the dim light. My reflection stared back, tired but awake. I lifted the frame, turned it over, and slid the new photo out. Behind it, a faint outline of tape residue. There had been another photo there once. Mine. They didn't buy a new frame. They reused the old one. That stung more than I expected. I ran my fingers along the glass, feeling where my face had once been, and whispered, "You built your picture on my absence." Then I smiled. Because that meant the foundation was still mine. I carried the folder to the kitchen and set it beside the whiskey bottle. The rain outside had returned, soft this time, like an audience applauding quietly. I poured one last glass, not to drink, but to toast. "To balance," I said, raising it toward the window. The storm answered with a low rumble, like it understood. I opened the folder again, slower this time, tracing my son's signature forged over mine. He'd become what I once feared I would, a man too proud to admit he was drowning. The tragedy wasn't that he'd failed me. It was that I recognized myself in his failure. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. The clock struck 2. The house groaned again, that deep wooden ache of time stretching. I tucked the folder under my coat and buttoned it tight. The weight against my chest felt like both a burden and armor. As I walked toward the front door, lightning flashed across the windows, painting the room in white and shadow. For a moment I saw myself reflected everywhere. In the glass, in the silverware, in the black of the TV screen. Not erased. Just waiting. The door handle was cold under my palm. I hesitated, listening one last time. To the wind, to the waves beyond the hill, to the small, fragile sound of my granddaughter turning in her sleep. "I'm not angry," I whispered. "I'm restoring balance." The house didn't argue. I stepped into the hall, leaving the light on behind me. The rain hit the roof harder now, steady and certain. I could almost hear my wife's voice again, the calm one she used when she was right, and I didn't want to admit it. "Don't let them forget you." I smiled faintly, tucking the folder closer. "Don't worry, love." "They won't." I stopped at the mirror by the door, the same one my son straightens his tie in every morning. My reflection looked older tonight, not weaker, just finished pretending. "If they can erase me," I muttered, sliding the file into my coat pocket, "then I can rewrite them." The words tasted like truth, bitter, clean, final. I opened the door and stepped into the rain. The cold hit first, then the relief. Behind me, the house stood silent. Ahead, the night waited, wide, dark, and ready to listen. And somewhere between the thunder and the tide, I swear I heard it again, her voice soft as the sea. "Balance, David, always balance." I nodded once to the storm and started walking. Because tonight, the archivist was awake. You ever sat at a table so quiet you could hear guilt chewing? That's what this dinner was. Not a meal, not a reunion, but a slow, polite execution. Stay with me. Because tonight, you'll see what a smile really hides. The table gleamed like an altar, polished wood, silver cutlery, candles flickering just bright enough to fake warmth. My daughter-in-law had outdone herself. Roasted chicken, crystal glasses, even folded napkins shaped like swans. I couldn't help but admire the performance. They called it family night. I called it theater. My son sat at the head where I used to sit. His voice carried that easy tone of someone who believes the worst part is behind him. My daughter chatted about her job. The grandchildren laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny, and I just sat there letting the smell of rosemary and secrets fill my lungs. No one looked at me for long. It was like staring at the ghost in the room might bring bad luck. I lifted my glass. To family, I said. They repeated it like a spell they didn't believe in. The clinking sound was sharp, hollow, like metal tapping bone. My son smiled. Glad you joined us, Dad. It's been a while since we all sat down together. I smiled back. Yes, it has. You've redecorated. My gaze slid toward the mantel where that damned photo still sat, my empty spot in their perfect little frame. He followed my eyes, then looked away. Yeah, he said softly. We wanted something new, something new. That's what he called erasing me. The children kept giggling, passing mashed potatoes like peace offerings. I kept my voice calm, casual, the way a man does when he's winding a clock he built himself. So, I began, how's the business? Still expanding? My son nodded. Better than ever. New clients? New partnerships? I cut into my chicken, slow and steady. You must be proud. Not every man can keep things running so smoothly after unexpected transactions. The fork froze halfway to his mouth. His eyes flicked toward me, then down to his plate. What do you mean? He asked lightly. Too lightly? Oh, nothing, I said. Just remembering the old days. Paperwork piling up. Numbers going missing. His wife laughed. Too quickly. Oh, you mean those old business hiccups. Water under the bridge, right? Her voice trembled on water. I could hear it, that crack that comes before a flood. I smiled, dabbing my lips with a napkin. Sure, water, but bridges still burn, don't they? The room's air thickened. The clatter of cutlery slowed. Even the youngest one, bless her honest heart, looked up at me, sensing the shift adults always pretend isn't there. I leaned back in my chair, watching the candlelight dance in their eyes. You know, I said softly, your mother used to say, the past doesn't sleep. It watches. That did it. The laughter died completely. My daughter lowered her fork. My son's jaw tightened. The only sound left was the faint ticking of the wall clock, each second scraping the edge of their nerves. She was a wise woman, I added. Didn't like secrets, especially not the kind that stain. My son cleared his throat. Dad, maybe tonight we just enjoy the meal? Oh, I am enjoying it, I said, smiling. You have no idea how long I've waited to sit here again, to see this table, this room, all of you together. It almost feels like the old days. Almost. My daughter-in-law picked up her wine. Her hand shook just enough to make the glass chime against the plate. We're all grateful, really, she said. You did so much for us. We'll never forget it. I let that sentence breathe. Then I tilted my head. You already did. Her cheeks went pale. My son tried to change the subject, asking about the weather, about politics, anything that didn't sound like truth. But my words lingered like smoke. I watched them. The tiny twitches, the forced smiles, the way my son avoided eye contact, as if my stare could peel the truth right off his skin. I took another slow bite, savoring it, chewing deliberately. This chicken's good, I said quietly. Almost as good as your mother's used to be. Silence. She'd be proud of how you all turned out, I added, my tone soft but sharp enough to cut. Though she'd have questions. About where the trust money went. About why certain documents have my name on them. My son's knife slipped, clinking against his plate. Dad, he said through a strained smile, maybe that's enough for tonight. But I wasn't talking to him anymore. I was talking to the ghost sitting between us. I leaned forward. Tell me, son, when you forged my signature, did your hand shake? Or did it feel familiar? He froze. The color drained from his face. The children stared, confused, frightened. Dad, no, I interrupted softly. Don't lie. Not tonight. The candlelight flickered, throwing shadows across the walls. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with old sins. My daughter-in-law set down her glass, her lipstick smudged on the rim. Maybe we should all just calm down, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't the time. I smiled again, gentle as ever. There's never a good time for truth, dear. Only now. For a long moment, no one moved. The storm outside began to pick up, rain tapping against the windows like someone trying to get in. I could see my wife's reflection in the glass again, faint, patient, waiting. You all think I don't know what goes on in my own house, I said, standing slowly. But I built this place. Every nail, every beam, every brick knows my hands. You can't hide anything here. My daughter's voice broke through the tension. Dad, why can't you just let things go? Her eyes and wide pleading almost undid me. For a second I saw her as a child again, sitting on the floor with her crayons, drawing me pictures of boats and sunsets. She didn't understand. She still wanted peace. I wanted to give it to her. I really did. But some peace comes too late. I placed my hands flat on the table. Because some things never left, I said quietly. They're still here. In the walls, in the papers, in the people who pretend they've moved on. My voice was calm, too calm. I watched it land, word by word, across their faces like rain on cracked glass. My son looked away first. My daughter stared at her plate. The children sat frozen. And for a few seconds I felt it, that perfect, terrible silence that only truth can make. Then from the corner of the room, the phone rang. It cut through the air like a blade. One ring, then another, then a third. Nobody moved. My son finally spoke. I'll get it, but I was already standing. No, I said. I will. The phone sat on the sideboard near the window, its old rotary face glowing softly in the candlelight. The storm outside flashed once, casting lightning through the glass, and for a moment it looked like the past itself had reached out to call me. I picked it up. Hello? At first, nothing. Just the soft hiss of static like a distant sea. Then a voice. Calm, familiar, older than memory. It's time, it whispered. My grip tightened. Who is this? But the line had already gone dead. I stood there holding the receiver against my ear, the dial tone humming like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Behind me, I could feel every pair of eyes watching. My family, my blood, my ghosts. I set the phone down slowly, the sound echoing through the room like a final verdict. The storm outside grew louder. The candles flickered, and I smiled. Because the past had just called back. Ever hear a house breathe? Not the kind you imagine in ghost stories. The real kind. The way old wood swells when it rains. The way windows rattle like teeth when thunder rolls in. That's how tonight began. Stay with me. Because the house I built finally decided to speak. The storm started slow, a whisper at the window, a polite knock of raindrops. Then came the roar. The kind that makes the power flicker, the air hum, and the past come alive in the walls. I should have gone to bed. Pretended the call never happened. Pretended I didn't recognize that voice. Gravelly, patient, older but unmistakable. It's time, it had said. 2 words that had been waiting decades to find me. Now the clock ticked in the dark like a metronome for guilt. I walked down the hallway barefoot. The floorboards groaned under me, same as they did the night my wife died. The smell of wet dust filled the air, thick and metallic. The lightning outside flashed across the family portraits lining the wall, faces frozen in years that never came back. Some frames had been turned backward long ago. Others had scratches where smiles used to be. The rain drummed harder. Somewhere deep inside the house, a window slammed shut on its own. The house wasn't haunted. It was remembering. The phone still sat on the sideboard, the receiver off the hook. I picked it up again, hoping maybe it was just some prank. But the line was dead now. Only the faint hum of static remained, like the sea breathing on the other end. I set it down carefully. My reflection caught in the window pane, older, smaller, stranger. A man the world had moved past but never forgiven. My wife used to say that storms cleanse things, wash away lies, give the truth new ground to grow. But sometimes storms just dig up the dead. Lightning flickered again, and I saw it, the old painting above the mantel. It had tilted slightly, revealing a small square outline behind it. I remembered that wall. I'd patched it myself once, years ago, after she'd asked me to hide the box for good. I told her I did. But I never forgot where. Still, my feet didn't move toward it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to dig up what we buried. Instead, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, hands trembling only a little. The liquid caught the candlelight like amber secrets. I raised it toward the ceiling. "To ghosts," I whispered. The thunder answered. Every corner of the house had a sound that belonged to her. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon. She used to bake during storms, said it kept the fear away from the kids. The dining room still echoed with her laughter, that light, trembling sound she tried to hide when she was nervous. I walked to the living room, to the spot where her favorite chair used to sit. Only an outline remained in the carpet now, a shadow of comfort, and on the wall beside it, our wedding photo. Cracked glass, yellowed edges, her eyes bright as morning, mine full of plans. That was before the deal, before the signature that changed everything. Before him, the voice on the phone had known. Somehow they always do. But this one wasn't a stranger. It had the weight of old betrayal in it, the kind you can hear even through static. "You kept the truth buried long enough," it had said. "Tell them what you did or I will. Tell them what I did. Not what my son did, not what they did to me. What I did, and that was the worst part. Because the voice wasn't wrong. I'd buried more than one secret in this soil. The lights flickered, then died completely. The storm swallowed the room in darkness. The only light left came from the lightning through the window, white and violent, throwing flashes of life across the furniture. I could hear the roof strain, the gutters overflow. The rain had turned into a flood, and somewhere beneath it all a sound. Not thunder, not creaking, but something softer. A thud. A hollow, wet sound coming from the back garden. The house groaned again like it was trying to pull my attention that way. I set my glass down. Slowly, I moved toward the back door. My reflection followed, flickering in the window's glass, blurred by rain and time. The door stuck halfway open, the wood swollen with water. I shoved it until it gave. The storm hit me like a wall. Cold rain, sharp wind, earth turning to mud beneath my feet. The garden had once been my wife's pride. She used to plant lilies near the edge of the fence, said they smelled like forgiveness. Now it was a mess of weeds and drowned flowers. The lightning flashed again, and I saw it, near the old oak, a patch of ground torn open by the rain. And something buried there, glinting faintly through the mud, a box, wooden, old, the kind she'd kept letters in. For a moment, I just stood there, rain running down my face, soaking through my clothes. The storm roared above, but all I could hear was her voice in my head, the way she said, "If they ever find it, we lose everything." I knelt slowly, the mud cold and heavy on my knees. My hands trembled as I brushed the dirt away. The latch was rusted shut. I dug my nails under it, prying it loose until it gave with a wet snap. Inside, wrapped in old plastic, were papers, letters, receipts, a photo, and the smell, old wood, rain, and something faintly sweet, like perfume long gone. The top paper was a contract, my name at the bottom, her signature beneath mine. It all came back then, the deal that started everything, the money we took from her brother to save this house, the debt we never paid, and the accident, the one the newspapers called a tragedy, but we called luck, because his insurance had saved us, and no one ever asked why I was there that night. I pulled out the photograph next, wiping the mud off with my sleeve. My breath caught. It was us, not the photo they hung in the living room, not the polished, perfect one. This was older, faded, torn at the edges. But there we all were. Me, my wife, my son, my daughter, even the dog. Everyone smiling, the sun behind us, and I was in it. Not missing, not erased, in it. I stared at it, the rain dripping down from my hair onto the paper, smudging the ink in the corner. My throat tightened. For years I thought she'd destroyed every trace of me after that night. But she hadn't. She'd buried it, hidden me, not erased me. And now the storm had found me again. A crack of thunder split the air, shaking the ground under me. Somewhere behind, a window shattered, the house crying out, or maybe warning me. I held the photo to my chest, mud smearing across my shirt, and whispered, "You kept me safe." But the voice in my head wasn't hers anymore. It was his, my son's. "You should have burned it, Dad." I froze. The wind carried the words like an echo through the storm, faint but real enough to make my skin crawl. "Who's there?" I shouted. The rain answered with silence, another flash, and for just a second, near the fence, a silhouette. Someone standing, watching, then gone. I stumbled back toward the house, clutching the box. My boots slipped in the mud. Lightning flashed again, the same spot empty now, but the feeling lingered. That prickle on the back of the neck when someone knows exactly what you've found. Inside, the hallway lights flickered back to life. The phone rang again, once, twice. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood there, dripping rain onto the floor, holding that box like a newborn secret. The photos on the wall seemed to look down at me now. Every face, even the ones turned backward, waiting. My breath came in short bursts. My heart pounded hard enough to feel it in my throat. I walked to the mantel again and set the box beside the tilted painting. The thunder rolled deep across the hills. In the mirror above the fireplace, I caught my reflection again. Pale, soaked, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. "They forgot me," I whispered, "because they thought I'd forgotten myself." The lightning cracked again, white and blinding, flooding the room with light. When it faded, I looked down at the box. The photo lay open inside it. And this time, for the first time in years, I saw myself smiling back, not erased. Not invisible, just waiting to be remembered. I knelt there, rain dripping from my coat onto the hardwood floor, my hand trembling over that old photograph. The storm outside raged on, thunder crawling across the sky like a promise. The house groaned again, not in pain, but in relief. Like it had been holding its breath all these years, waiting for someone to open the wound. I brushed the last bit of dirt from the corner of the photo and saw the faint handwriting scrawled beneath it. "My wife's, for when he remembers who he is." I closed my eyes, my throat tightening. The air thick with the smell of rain and memory. I didn't hear the footsteps behind me at first. Soft, deliberate, closing in slow. By the time I did, it was too late. You ever notice how quiet a house gets after a storm? Not peaceful quiet. The kind that hums beneath the floorboards, heavy with what was said and what can never be taken back. That's how the morning began. No thunder, no wind, just the sound of a house pretending nothing happened. Stay with me, because today the truth finally sat down at the table. The first light crept through the windows, soft and gold, washing over the wreckage the night left behind. The curtains were half torn, the floor still damp from rain I'd tracked in. The box lay open on the table, mud dried around its edges, the photograph resting inside like a wound still breathing. They came down one by one, my son first, hair messy, eyes hollow from a night without sleep. My daughter followed, her face pale, mascara faintly smeared. The grandchildren lingered behind them, silent, watching with the unspoken understanding that something had broken beyond repair. No one spoke at first. The air smelled of coffee and fear. The photograph sat between us. They kept glancing at it like it might explode if looked at too long. I broke the silence first. My voice was steady, too steady, the calm that comes when there's nothing left to lose. "I didn't bring this out to hurt you," I said. "I brought it out so you'd finally look at me." My son's jaw clenched. What is that supposed to mean? You tell me, I replied. He didn't answer. None of them did. I lifted the photo gently, the paper soft and wrinkled from rain. The glass had cracked overnight, a jagged line slicing through my wife's smile, and through mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the last picture before everything changed, I said. Before the accident. Before the lies. My daughter swallowed hard. Dad, please, but I kept going. I had to. I signed that deal for you, I said, looking at my son. The one you brag about. The one that made you successful. I thought it was the only way to keep this family alive, but I didn't realize who I was killing to do it. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping back like a gunshot. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I do, I said softly. I was there that night. I saw the car. I saw the man who never got up. The room went still. The children's eyes darted from face to face, too young to understand, too smart not to sense the horror. It was your uncle, I said finally. Your mother's brother. The one whose insurance saved us from losing the house. She made me promise never to tell you. Said it would destroy you. But the truth doesn't stay buried. It rots everything around it until it digs itself out. My daughter covered her mouth. My son shook his head violently. No, you're lying. Am I? I asked, sliding the contract from the box. His name forged beside mine, the same lie carried through decades. You used the same pen I did. You knew even then. You just pretended not to. He stared at the paper like it was poison. I was a kid, he whispered. I didn't understand. Neither did I cut in. And look what it made me. A man too cowardly to face what he built. Tears welled in my daughter's eyes. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion. I kept your mother's secret because I thought it was love, I said. But love doesn't protect lies. It buries them alive. Lightning flashed faintly beyond the window, far off now, like an echo from a storm already spent. My son's hands trembled. You're doing this to punish us, he said. No, I said. I'm doing this so you'll finally see me. The man you erased. The man who bled to build your future while you took the credit and called it destiny. My daughter sobbed. The sound filled the room like glass breaking. My son just stood there, breathing hard, eyes burning but empty. Dad, he said quietly, you don't know what this will do to us. Oh, I know, I said. It'll make you honest. The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing second. The house felt smaller, tighter, like it wanted to collapse around us. The grandchildren looked lost, like they'd wandered into a story meant for adults. My daughter wiped her tears, whispering something about leaving, about fresh air. But no one moved, because we all knew. There was no air left in this house that wasn't heavy with the truth. My son tried to speak again, but I raised my hand. Don't, I said. Just don't. Every word you say will sound like the man I used to be, and I've buried him enough times. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, crawling between us like something that had waited too long to be named. I looked down at the photo again. The crack across the glass now ran straight through my face, splintering me in two. Perfect, I thought. That's how they remember me anyway. Half of a man, half of a story. I don't hate you, I said quietly. You should know that. I still see the boy who helped me paint this house, who fell asleep in the truck after fishing trips. I still see the girl who cried when her mother burned dinner and told me I should be nicer. My voice shook then, the first crack in the calm. But I can't pretend anymore. I can't live in a house built on someone else's grave. My daughter's sobs broke into quiet gasps. My son's eyes glistened, but his pride held them back. He looked at me like he wanted to speak and to apologize. Maybe, but the words never came. Instead, he sat down again, his head in his hands. And for the first time in years, I saw him small, human, fragile, like I'd been. I took the photo from the table. The crack in the glass caught the light, scattering it into a dozen small shards across the room. It almost looked beautiful, the way truth sometimes does right before it hurts. I kept this hidden for too long, I said. Maybe if I'd shown it sooner, things would have been different. No one answered. The storm outside had left puddles across the porch. The air smelled of wet earth and salt. I could hear the waves in the distance, steady, endless, like something reminding me that life doesn't stop for our tragedies. I tucked the photo under my arm. My daughter whispered, "Where are you going?" "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Somewhere the walls don't remember everything I've done." As I walked toward the door, the floor creaked beneath me, the same old sound that used to follow my wife's footsteps. I could almost hear her again, her voice soft but firm. "Don't forget who you are." I paused at the threshold, the photo pressed against my chest. "They left me out," I said softly, "because they feared what my face would remind them of." My son looked up then, his voice breaking for the first time. "Dad, what are we supposed to do now?" I turned to him. "Live with it. The same way I did." The wind outside carried the faint smell of rain and sea salt. The light was bright now, too bright, almost cruel after so much darkness. I stepped out onto the porch, the air hitting me cold and clean. Behind me, I heard the sound of something shattering, glass breaking again. The photograph frame, maybe, or maybe the illusion finally giving way. I didn't look back. The world ahead was wide and quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't forgive, but listens. I started down the steps, the boards still slick under my shoes. The sun had begun to rise through the clouds, turning everything gold and gray at once. I walked until I reached the road, the wind brushing through my hair, the photo warm against my chest where the sun hit it. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not free, not clean, just light enough to move. I stopped once, halfway down the path. The house behind me looked smaller than I remembered. Old, fragile, human. I turned back, just enough to see the doorway, the faces still framed by shadow. My daughter holding her brother's arm, my son staring after me, broken but breathing. The photo's cracked glass caught the sunlight, flashing once in my hand. I smiled, faint, tired but real. "Now the picture's complete," I whispered, my voice barely carrying through the morning wind. "Even if it's broken." And with that, I walked on. The house didn't call me back. It just watched, the way all old houses do, quiet, remembering,